Hello, our dear friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there, dear friends. Welcome back. I did something different.
She just amazes me every day.
Yeah, indeed. Yes.
So this is another deep dive, and you might like to go in depth in what we are going to be sharing and pick things apart. We'll give you guys all the links as always, and we have touched on most of these subjects in the past, but it's the putting things together that I really think makes a difference. When you understand what's going on today by understanding what really happened in the past, not his story, not their story, but what really happened and what did really happen in the past, what is happening right now. Again, we could see right now, fact checkers say, yeah, that's exactly it. You might as well just come straight out and say, B.I.G. brother says.
Indeed. I mean, that's just sort of, it is what it is right now.
Yeah. And again, please do subscribe to both channels. Each one does have unique videos. There's a lot of these deep dives on Evolutionary. And if you guys want to go binging, go binging and check in some of the older ones, Consciousness and Reality, all these other ones, the Seeking Truths. There's a lot of videos in here, 1.1 thousand videos there. There's a good deal to go through, the news, politics, 1.3 thousand videos to go through. The playlists on EEARTS as well. Not quite as many. Esoterica 682, 1,000 on what's really going on. Deep dive, because that's the only way we really get anywhere, especially when we go within. Now, I understand this is going to demonetize this video, because this is a brief bit of today's, this is actually an article that's from 2017, but it is still very, very relevant to what's going on. Who are the Yazidi, the quote-unquote devil worshippers? Why is ISIS, the Islamic State, ISIL, trying to slaughter and enslave this ancient minority? So in case you missed the story of ISIS fanatics' conquest of the Yazidis' ancient homeland in August 2014, a recap is essential for understanding the plight of this endangered community that has faced centuries of what can only be described as a genocidal assault. Now, what you have to realize is, again, ISIS is not what it appears. For one, it has nothing to do with the goddess Isis. And of course, there's a lot of mainstream religious philosophy which would demonize the goddess Isis. Yet, we got to go back to that just so obvious rule. If the world is controlled by Satan, the adversary of humanity, everything is from their perspective, the satanic perspective. The mainstream will be the satanic perspective. So why have these people been called devil worshippers? And again, there's a negative connotation associated in many minds, unfortunately, with people that would call themselves, they wouldn't even necessarily call themselves pagans, but people that people call pagans, and understanding, these terms, where they originated from, why are certain people persecuted, other ones are not. Other ones are used to actually do the persecuting. But again, they're just tools of the real controllers. So this is an interesting article, but the point is not really to go into their mysterious belief system and the people themselves, which are very, very ancient. It's more showing what's happened in the past is happening today. It happened yesterday, it happened 100 years ago, it happened a couple hundred years ago. It just constantly is repeating itself while we're in this dark time. When you look at this cave system, This is in Cappadocia, during Kuyu. Fascinating, absolutely fascinating. This man found the world's largest ancient tunnel system network behind the wall in his home. This is from 2018. And you could see this round stone would be used to block off the entry in. And this is on the inside. This is on the inside. What was it that terrified so many people? Because this place is gigantic, and we still haven't uncovered all of it. To go inside the earth, deep inside the earth, and block themselves in, as if they're just terrified about something. Terrified. And so we've uncovered this from 1963. It's a massive network. It's basically an underground city. Now, some think that Noah's Ark, and again, that story is actually a rehash of a story that's actually probably 2,000 years older, at least, came to rest on Mount Ararat. And again, it's not illogical to think that a lot of the people that survived the Younger Dryas cataclysm, which hit us about 12,000 years ago, they did survive it by going into the mountains, and literally going into the mountains, as well as going to the mountains. Going to the mountains and going into the mountains. But there's much more to what really happened than what we're told. We're told, it might have been either an asteroid or a comet that came down. But we see that in the tales from Sumeria, Enlil was aggravated with humanity and wanted a great reset. Oh, we all know about that term, don't we? So humanity was just too many. Needed to cut the numbers down, get rid of them entirely. And then Enki didn't want everybody to get gone, so he wanted to save some of them. So he kind of whispered, said, "Psst, you might want to start building an ark, guys. There's trouble coming. There is trouble coming." Now, the ark could be many things. There could be many arks. Because, in fact, we find these stories are universal in nature. People have these stories in the Americas, not just in, not just in, say, the Mediterranean and the Middle East, not, even isolated to Africa or Asia or Europe, everywhere. Everywhere. We find these stories are universal in origin. We remember stuff, but do we remember it perfectly accurately? As again, we could play that game as kids where you sit down in a circle and there's 21 kids in class, and you start out with a story and the story is totally changed by the time you get to the end. It's just the nature of things. But why did these people create this vast network under the ground? Now, they're saying 5,000 years old. This is older. This is, again, older. Over 1,500 buildings down there. This is a great representation. Look at the levels. There's multiple levels, at least 7 levels, and they're still finding more. It's an underground city. The people went underground for a reason. Why? Well, Cindy's gotten an answer from the guides.
For their bodies to be up there on the surface being exposed to a lot of poison would absolutely kill them. But there's some other knowledge here. There's other beings who had an understanding of how to create an underground city so they could still have oxygen, yet it was not being poisoned. So helping them make this long before something really did happen to change the surface of the planet was important. So we look at these alien entities, and they do have a soft spot in their hearts for humans, and these came down and they helped humans make this. This is not something humans did on their own. They did not have the know-how. They did not have the technology. They did not have the understanding on how to get the good air down into the earth, but other beings do. And they don't just sit back and allow so much life to be lost. they're just like us. If we see a being that's struggling, a dog, a cat, we can't just sit there and watch it die. We are called to go help. So these beings have such a strong ability to hear their calling from their higher source or higher self. They act on it, and they know when to act on it, and they know when they really need to act on it, because it's that calling, it's that pulling inside the soul that they can feel so clearly.
We find the same reasoning and same sort of legend going on over in the American Southwest, the Ant people of the Hopi, who literally it translates into Anunnaki, but this is a benevolent legend of beings, and they are depicted. So when you see the kivas, again, the kivas represent things as well. I don't know if you wanted to comment on that, but you could see the depiction. This is a very much looking insectoid being holding the hands of a human, bringing them down into the earth. And then they let them know that it's not a gray alien. It's very different. They let the humans know when it was safe to come back onto the surface. And again, this is part of the Hopi's legend of the different worlds, the worlds that were destroyed. And again, fifth world is where we are at this point in time. And yet it's many more times than that. That's what their memory is of it, but it's actually many, many more times. So again, benevolent beings did tell people, hey, something's coming. Build an ark or get underground and seal yourself off, because what's coming is not good. And so they did. And they did it over here in Turkey. They did it over in the American Southwest. If you guys are not familiar, we've talked about so many things. In the Grand Canyon, there's a section that's still walled off to this day that you cannot go to. You cannot go explore. They have found in there, according to the buzz, the more modern legends, maybe just 100 and something years ago, people found stuff inside there that really looked like it belonged in a Buddhist monastery, and yet also right next to things that look like they belong in ancient Egypt. Two apparently very, very different cultures, different parts of the world, in the same spot. And this area, again, is blocked off. We're not allowed to go in there. Where we had the big Ridgecrest quake, and Cindy and I experienced that quake. It felt like there was a basketball team trying to push over our RV. And for those of you that remember, we weren't too far from Ridgecrest when it happened, and we really felt it. I had never felt a quake like that before. But there is a military base over there. You might be aware of that. There's also legends of a way to get into the inner earth over there. And so, of course, there's a military base where there's an inner earth entrance. This is one of the things we discover as we look deeper and deeper into it. All over the world, there are military bases by inner earth entrances. That's because, again, the militaries of the world, it's just basically for public consumption that they're facing each other and fighting each other, competing with each other. The reality is they're about controlling humanity for the controllers. And yes, wars happen. Yes, people die. But the bigger purpose is, again, it's controlling people. Every way, shape, and form. The amount of people on the planet, what they're thinking, what they're doing, what they are going to be allowed to understand and know, and what they're not going to be allowed to understand and know.
The game is, it's all about control, and with our energies and the way they are and the way things are changing, it's not too much longer before everyone will figure out how to cleanse their temple in such a way that they can reach out and feel the truth of the matter. And there is so much that needs to be hidden for the controllers to stay in control. And how important is it to them? It's extremely important to them. They will go, it seems like, to any length to make sure that the narrative in which keeps them in control is going to continue to be followed, and that includes making threats to people who uncover the truth.
So there's a Mediterranean Stonehenge off the coast of Sicily. And again, there are many Neolithic sites all across the world. We can find Adam's calendar in it's not really South Africa, but it's the southern portion of Africa. And again, it's fascinating too, because we look at the legends of that, and it's renamed again. Adam's calendar. They even call Adam's bridge, the bridge that was actually supposedly made by Rama, and with help from Hanuman and Hanuman's army. And you could look at Hanuman and very easily say this seems like a being that all those Bigfoot legends are based on, because that's exactly what he looked like. And there was an army of them that was fighting a demon king, or a Rakshasa, a Asura, who was on the island of Lanka, today's Sri Lanka. And they built a bridge from basically the mainland out to the island that we could still see to this day. And many would have called it Rama's Bridge. Some might have called it Hanuman's Bridge. No, it's renamed Adam's Bridge. Just like Adam's calendar, Adam and Eve. Okay, so you have to recognize, when you look at the Abrahamic tradition, that's the controller language. It's the controller's language to cover up the reality. 9,350-year-old underwater Stonehenge found in the Mediterranean Sea. It may rewrite history. Well, they're going to rewrite it. They constantly are rewriting it. Every time we find something, of course, the official sources will come in, and fact checkers say, Big Bro says, don't worry, there's nothing to see here. As you see, it's in the Sicilian Channel area. Tunisia is in Africa. Sicily is off the coast of Italy. I mean, this is a gorgeous, beautiful area. And at one time, all this was above water. The world changes. It does change very fast, much more rapidly than they want you to know. And also for reasons that they don't want you to understand. Just like, right now, everything's climate change. People are having heart attacks because of climate change.
In video games.
Yeah.
Yep, and video games.
But, they like to blame the climate change for everything. But no, there's always been technology. When we look at ruins all across the globe that speak of amazingly advanced societies in some way that choose not to always go the way we did. So when they have the capability to do things like that we are doing today, but they choose not to do it, that's something we should ask the question, why? Well, because maybe they value living in harmony, living in a symbiotic relationship with the earth itself. When we look to this legend, again, this is very old, the curse of Agade. Naram sins fight with the gods. This again, we got to look to the past. We got to do it with fresh eyes, recognizing that so much of everything has been revised and retold. But again, many people will just do their ancient history in the Bible and not look elsewhere. But you got to look elsewhere because, again, that's just Reader's Digest, for those that remember Reader's Digest. Mm-hmm. It's abbreviated. It doesn't have all the info. And it's a retelling from the controller scenario. The curse of Agade, we can date up to the period of Ur III of Mesopotamia. The origin of the story can be earlier. Dating's always difficult, of course, because they don't want us to be able to. But somewhere around 2100, 1940 BC. So, this story is basically at least 2,000 years older than the oldest fragments of anything that we really have biblical. And the fight of King Naram Sin, the grandson of King Sargon the Great, deals with the fight of the king with the gods. Yes, the gods. Wait a minute. Man dares fight with the gods? Mainly with Enlil. Uh-oh. That sounds like a tough one. King Naram-Sin ruled the Akkadian Empire from 2261 to 2224 BC. He is understood as the most important king of the Akkadian Empire after his grandfather, King Sargon, who was the founder of the Akkadian Empire. King Naram-Sin enlarged the boundaries of the empire, increased the power and the military strength. So, it's fascinating to look at this story, and they go on and talk about how Enlil takes his blessings away from him. And, because he dares to kind of complain. The gods aren't so nice. Maybe we shouldn't really worship some of these guys. We talked about thought forms. Now, some beings out there, like when we talk about the Olympian gods, we are somewhat talking, because you can't always categorize everything as being the same. So, again, people that say it's all angels, it's all demons, they're all confused. They only know the controller part of the story. There's all sorts of beings involved. And when we talk about the Olympian gods, some of them were what you might call offspring of some of these extraterrestrials and humans. Some were pure thought forms, just basically golems, so to speak, egregores.
Right. Well, these energies and these processes are created by beings who can actually see the energy and see how energy flows and see it flow in such a way where it's going to create an advantage if they set something up structurally in this manner or structurally in that manner. So yes, everything that we read, our school books, history books, religious books, you have to look at everything and understand there's definitely always going to be an element of control. And it can be very scary to step away from all that you think you knew and reevaluate everything, but that's something that we need to do. We need to step back and say, okay, well, this was a story to keep me in line with this understanding, but who am I? What do I really believe in aside? If you move aside these belief systems that have been put in front of me, who am I? And that's where we're at now. We are all discovering who we are and what is true to our soul. We are all learning how to read energy and follow that energy in a way that's going to touch our soul.
And so, again, when we show some of these writings and stuff, this is somebody's take on this story too. So it's not necessarily our take. We'll give you guys the link so you go in and decide for yourself. But he starts out as being somebody that, because of the traditions and the belief set, started out respectful of the deities, kind of believing, what he was brought up with. But then, again, he starts to wonder, why are they going through so many hard times? Why is there so much tragedy happening? And so here, the author here is talking about this being like the book of Job. But you have to realize, again, this is all of this, including these Sumerian writings. There's been plenty of time to have things revised. We don't even know who originally truly wrote these. It's the same thing with anything biblical. So what is the best thing for us to do is to build discernment. Again, it's to build discernment. Get your temple clean. Have a daily practice. Prioritize, and when I say practice, I mean spiritual practice, a body, mind, breath practice, like meditation, yoga, Qigong, etc. Do things that are going to keep your vibration high. Stay away from the toxic foods. Eat as much whole organic food as possible. Cut yourself off from the negative controlling frequencies as much as possible. Get out and commune in nature as much as you possibly can. Because when we look to these stories, the thing that we get and the thing that becomes apparent, when you look at Job, and it's just basically supposed to be an argument between God and Satan as to how much this guy will tolerate before he says, I curse God. And so he goes through all sorts of trials and tribulations, losing his wife, losing his kid, you name it. The suffering is enormous. And still he doesn't curse God. Well, these entities love to play those games. That's part of the thing. Their mindset is such that they love to test humans. They love to test our will. They love to test our souls. They take a sadistic enjoyment in seeing how much we will tolerate. Sometimes they actually do give us clues right in our faces, almost like they're never going to figure this out.
Mm-hmm. And it's really repulsive. I mean, when you sit down and you start to look and see what they're doing, has anything changed? Has anything changed? Look at this. We see these stories of Job in the Bible talking about God and Satan. Well, there's these entities that are controlling our very lives, and they're doing the same exact thing. They're poisoning our food. They're making our laws to where they're just almost impossible to live with. They're controlling us to a point where we can barely function in a way that we want to function, making our lives so difficult, and then ratcheting up certain rules and certain laws just to see, well, when is mankind going to finally lose it? So looking at these things and understanding times have not changed, and we need to find out who we are and not step in that big pile of poo that they've placed in front of us. No, we need to go in another direction, and that direction should never be anything that is going to harm another being.
So this story begins by describing the city of Akkad, where people enjoyed the prosperity of the city. All the riches come from outside in the city. First problem appears when goddess Inanna gets the impression that some of the treasure of this rich place should be shared with her and the gods. This is like a pious citizen from the city should feel. But the god Enlil didn't feel the same, decided to bless the building of a temple after he heard words coming from Ikor. The building of a temple will not satisfy the anger of the god Enlil towards Akkad before the god destroyed the city of Kis and took King Sargon for to rule Mesopotamia from the south to the highlands. The goddess Inanna, the patron goddess of King Sargon, established her home in Akkad. So again, we see, just like in the Bible, Sodom and Gomorrah, you have these gods destroying whole cities. Remember, Genesis 11. Look, humanity is united. Come, let us go down there. Let us scatter them. Now envision ships coming down, terrifying people, weapons going off, people getting vaporized into nothingness. This is really a vision of what is like what happened. It's technology and beings coming down and destroying people that don't have the technology to even understand how they're being destroyed. It's just an act of the gods. And then in the Bible it's just an act of God. It's just an act of Yahweh, an act of Jehovah. Again, you got to look back to these older stories to understand there is nothing new in there. It's a retelling of everything that you can find in other legends, mostly again of Sumerian, Akkadian, as well as some Egyptian origin and others as well. So the gods in Mesopotamia were understood by the people as living in the temple, literally living in the temple. This is what the god, oh, you want to go visit Enlil? Yeah, he's in today. Yeah, his ship's over there. So he's there. You could go. You could knock. He's in a bad mood. I wouldn't recommend it.
Mm-hmm. Think about these politicians that see themselves above the law. Well, they have homes that they live in too, and you can actually go visit them here in the 3D.
So again, the gods in Mesopotamia were understood by the people as living in the temple. And again, each city-state had its own patron deity. This is why when it says, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, it's talking about the God that was patron deity of Ur. It's that simple. It's not the creator of this universe. These are cosmic, intergalactic, interdimensional pirates. The people of the city from Akkad could see the entire house of Enlil, the bedroom, the great and holy treasure chest of the gods. Holy treasure chest of the gods. What happens when the walls of Jericho come down? Well, Joshua gives the decree, kill every man, woman, and child, but take the gold and the silver and all the precious belongings and put it in the treasure chest of the Lord. No change. This is the exact same system. There's no difference here. It's just been revised as far as monotheism to the plurality of the gods. But in reality, these are not gods. They never were. Intergalactic, interdimensional pirates is much more accurate. So, as we see, the inhabitants and servants of the house became stolen by King Naram-Sin, who committed this action of a great sin and a great sacrilege towards the gods. Again, slavery has been learned from these beings. This is why it's never condoned in the Bible. And even when we go into the New Testament, slaves, obey your human earthly masters. What's the implication there? Well, you got to obey the non-human, non-earthly masters too.
I mean, just really, you translate this information and you see the politicians here translated to that, and they're just simply on a different realm, on a different platform. But really, all the energies are the same. So we can't really think of anything as, modern times. We are far from that, technology that is the pinnacle of mankind. No, we're in the dark. But what can we do? I think we have to keep going back to that, because this is it's a very frustrating time for mankind.
Okay, so okay, there we go. The action of Naram-Sin was caused by the silence of the gods towards his questions and demands, because he was just trying to get a direct answer and they wouldn't answer him. They ignored him, because there is a contempt for humanity in general with these beings. After all, they're just a slave race. That's the way they view it. Therefore, the destruction of the temple was done by the king in a powerful glue of anger. Because of this action, the other gods aligned with the god Enlil, and to save the rest of the land, they cursed Akkad and made it to become destroyed. Besides the right relationship between the king and the gods, the story is a warning not to take up a weapon against the gods, not in physical or in a spiritual way. The humans can't win any fight with the gods. Well, spiritually, it's not the case.
Definitely not.
No, they have technology, but they're stuck in the mud. They cannot go any higher. Naram-Sin means beloved of sin. Now, you're taught in Bible study, sin means missing the mark. Missing the mark. What's the mark? Well, it's that which we aspire to, right? You could say it's doing things right. It's taking the high road things. But see, everything becomes twisted in time. So Naram-Sin, now Sin was the moon god too, as we're going to see. So he was the last great king in the Akkadian Empire, known as the King of the Four Corners and the living god. They even called them kings, demigods. Again, we have all of these legends of these human earthly hybrids. They believe he had only one son, Shar Kali Shari. He is in many stories, legends, and songs. And as you see here, Sin in mythology is the god of the moon. And you can see the crescent moon, which many will associate with Islam. And some will say, well, no, that's not really an association that people in Islam use. But again, Sin or Suen, in Aramaic, Sin or S-Y-N, even sure, it's regarding the moon. And as we've shared with you guys, the moon truly is a mothership. And the moon was put in place according to legends from indigenous people in some African tribes, as well as some indigenous people in the Italian peninsula before Italy ever was that the moon was put there by two arguing brothers that are not human. And again, the god of the moon. So we are again talking about these same entities again. Same entities associated with cattle, sheep, shepherds, etc. It goes on and on. There's many different beings, but it's fascinating too. When we look to where Moses discovered the burning bush, and we look to the mountain there, it's also associated with sin. Islam, and it comes out of the Abrahamic tradition and Christianity again. These are all common roots. It's all intertwined as we see this. There you see way down here. And again, Abraham came from and we're talking about Akkadian and Sumeria. And this is a depiction of the Babylonian weather god. Again, these beings dressed in the garb of the day to make it easier and more comfortable for humans to accept them, even though they were much, much larger than humans. As you see, this is him. This is that king slaying normal humans here. And we can see there, I don't know, he's probably 10 to 12 feet tall. I would venture to guess by the size of the other ones. So I'll give you guys all the links there. But it's interesting. The ones that he slaughtered in that battle lived in this Zagros Mountain area in Mesopotamian, in the Mesopotamian area. And this is also very interesting because here we find fossils that belong to Neanderthals, where they were living there as far back as perhaps 35,000 years ago, according to the official sources. Maybe it was even more like 12,000 years ago when we get down to it. Maybe it was even more like 6,000 years ago. Again, everything is covered up. What's interesting, too, is these people are called the Lullaby people, ancient group of tribes that inherited the Shirazor Plain in the Zagros Mountains, western Iran. Warlike people, that's what they say now from the history. But again, were they warlike, or were they made to be warlike because they were being exterminated? They were especially active during the reign of the Akkadian king Naram Sin. They actually describe them as being monkey-like. And now whether that's one group of people trying to put down another group of people, saying they were a little bit shorter, a little bit stockier, kind of wild, black hair and beards, does start to make me think of Neanderthals. Neanderthals were stockier, but yes, bigger, more muscular. Nothing is as it's portrayed. And again, history is written by the victors, who ultimately won. Well, the system we have in place now, you could go and say the U.S. Empire comes out of the British Empire, which comes out of the Holy Roman Empire, which comes out of the Roman Empire, which came out of maybe the Greeks, which also came out of, basically, we could trace it all the way back to Sumeria and Mesopotamia. Political propaganda art in ancient Mesopotamia. Realize that the political machine was in effect there. They wanted to portray some people as being godlike. They wanted to portray some people as being much, much less than godlike, as we see. And then there's not just the stelae that we were looking at of, this war and the battle against the gods with Naram Sin, but Hammurabi. And again, the 10 Commandments, it's again Reader's Digest of the codes of Hammurabi, which is much more ancient. 200 laws and punishments that are all put down on steles. There's nothing to be found in the Bible that you won't find elsewhere. So, it's fascinating too. There's said to be dragons in those areas. Dragons. Ancient human remains in the Zagros Mountains can rewrite history. Yeah, this is again revisionist history, and this has a lot to do with what we started out talking about. This really has everything to do with what we were talking about. Who are these people? Now, we have different groupings of people, some that look very, very Caucasian, I guess is the way to say, and perhaps many of them having either reddish hair or blonde hair. Again, Robert Seffer, Atlantean Gardens, he goes big into all this. And then other ones that are much more darker skin, darker hair. It's never stopped as far as the persecution of what we would term more indigenous people by that colonizing energy. And recognize where that comes. You know, when we look at the East Indian Tea Company, when we look at all these different entities, you know, the political system, the religious system, the ideological system, everything we get comes from, truly, we could trace it back to Sumeria, we could trace it back to the Gigi and the Anunnaki. Because we inherited their way of looking at everything. The Abrahamic tradition is their way of looking at everything. You know, the Kurds don't have a land of their own, and, you know, they've always been persecuted too. So again, we're looking at some of these people in some of these areas, and we were talking about, we started out talking about the Yazidis, who are viewed as devil worshippers. But if we really recognize that this world is set up to worship and give power to the very satanic system and the satanic beings that are really adversaries to humanity, then who really are they worshiping if they're worshiping the devil? It's all twisted. It's all distorted. And again, the bottom line is the people that are trying to stay connected to nature, that are remembering things that were taught to them in the gold and silver age, they're the ones that are going to be the target of the controllers, first and foremost. They're the target. And so, you know, when we look at these questions, and again, you wonder why certain groups of people seem to be here today, gone tomorrow. It's because they had something they could have shared that would have exposed the controllers and would also give a clue to the true history of this planet. And again, we could go to Tartaria, and we will talk about that a lot too, because we're talking about the same thing here.
You know, it's a long journey. It's a long journey to find these meanings and these understandings, and then figure out who you are and find out what path you want to go down. But I just want you to take a look at the artwork that they put on the walls and how they exalted certain beings over other beings, and understand, you know, in that time there was also a media, you know, just like we have a media right now, and look who they exalt, look who they put on a pedestal. These energies follow one another from time to time to time. And right now it's our time, if we want to break free and excuse ourselves from that belief system and create something that we want to be our own experience that we intended on coming to have here in the first place. Now is that time to make that determination and start walking in a direction that frees our soul and spirit.
And so if we're always questing to try to find what tradition is true, you're not going to find it. You're just not going to find it, because every tradition has been touched by the controllers. There is no proper belief system. There is no right dogma, but we can understand what's not right. We can understand where there are distortions. We can see all that. And again, it's you're not going to find any one system that's perfect. It's up to each one of us to devise our own way and our own religious dogma that feels right to us, if that's what we want. And that's only if that's what we want. If it serves us in any way, shape, or form. And it might serve you today, it might not tomorrow. So we should always be flexible and always open to change. Whenever there's new information that comes out, new revelations that all of a sudden sink into our minds, go with it. Buddha is attributed to saying, when you hear something, don't take it as a fact. Don't embrace it before you weigh it in both heart and mind and see, is it something that benefits the greater all? Then, okay. If not, then maybe you should just discard it. So again, just shedding more light and perhaps getting people to think about why things happen. Because again, when we talk about Daesh or ISIS, who is it really? It's the controllers. And, again, we could learn from nature. And I can't imagine that there's anything more cute than this. Is there anything in this world that's more cute than this? Is it possible?
Oh, look at this little guy. He's just taken one grape after the next in great stride and living in the moment and enjoying that and just being. That is adorable. Just look at that. That releases happy hormones, you guys. It's so cute.
Absolutely. And gosh, that's the definition of adorable, which we will not find in any political seat on this planet.
No, not at all.
So again, get closer to the mother energy, because she is right here under your feet. She's all around you. And as we've alluded to before and said, every system, even including, the Gnostics, which were persecuted, still distortion there. There's none of these systems that have it all right, because again, we're in a matrix where the controllers can alter anything at any time, and they do.
Indeed.
God bless and namaste.
Namaste.